Notre Dame's season is at a crossroads after the 0-2 start, and Saturday's game against Purdue will reveal exactly who this team really is. Are the contenders ready to fight back, or a group content to fade away? It's coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. I really appreciate you joining me here today on Wednesday, September 17th, and thanks as always for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow on your favorite podcast platform so that way you don't miss an episode. And the time has come to try and turn the page to Notre Dame's upcoming matchup against Purdue. And look, I know emotions are still running high after the 0-2 start, especially considering the way that the Texas A&M game ended, but Saturday offers a prime opportunity for the Irish to get back on track. I'll give you my scouting report on the Boilermakers through their first three games. We're going to break down the keys to victory, and I'll wrap it up with my predictions. But first, let's set the stage. To me, this game will reveal what this Notre Dame team truly wants to be this season. Will they look like the group that everyone raved about in the preseason, myself included, the one that was ranked 6th in the country, buzzing with potential, and had all kinds of hype? Or will they play like a team that's dysfunctional, defenseless, and frankly, just disappointing? Their destiny is not fully in their hands anymore after losing the first two games of the season, but they can control how they respond. And if they want any say in living up to those lofty preseason expectations, it starts with making a conscious choice. Enough is enough. Tighten up. Rise to the standard and dominate an overmatched Purdue team. And we're going to find out if this team is up for it at 3:30 p.m. Eastern inside Notre Dame Stadium on Saturday. The game is going to air on NBC with Dan Hicks and Jason Garrett on the call for the first time this season. And right now, the forecast is calling for a picture-perfect day in South Bend. High of 78 degrees, partly cloudy skies, a light breeze, and just a 20% chance of rain. And Notre Dame comes into this game leading the all-time series against Purdue 58-26-2, and the winner receives the Shillelagh Trophy, not to be confused with the Jewel Shillelagh, which is given to the winner of Notre Dame USC. The Irish have won the last 9 matchups against the Boilermakers, and they have not lost to them since 2007, that abysmal season when Notre Dame finished 3-9. But there have been some close calls along the way. Notably, 2009 when Kyle Rudolph scored the game-winning touchdown on 4th down, 2012 when Tommy Rees had to come in relief of Everett Golson and lead the game-winning drive that ended in the game-winning field goal. And then in 2013, that was a pretty back-and-forth game in West Lafayette as well, but Notre Dame came out on top in that one, 31-24. But the game between Notre Dame and Purdue was the complete opposite of close last season. Notre Dame beat the brakes off the Boilermakers last year to the tune of 66-7. The score was 42-0 at halftime. Notre Dame was trying to run out the clock, and Jadarian Price broke off a huge touchdown run going into halftime, and I could not believe what I was seeing because it's actually a running joke within my friend group that the Purdue game is always tricky, never a whole lot of fun, like pulling teeth. But as it turned out, the Boilermakers proved to be the worst Power 4 team in the country last year, so they fired the head coach, Ryan Walters, and they replaced him with Barry Odom from UNLV. Odom was previously the head coach at Missouri, where he went 25-25 in 4 seasons from 2016 through 2019. And once he got let go from there, he spent some time at Arkansas as defensive coordinator before getting a second chance as a head coach at UNLV. And he actually did a really good job of turning around the Rebels program. He went 19-8 in 2 seasons there, including a 10-3 season last year. And there was one point last season where they were considered a dark horse to make the college football playoff as a group of 5 representative. It didn't happen, but they still had a really good season. And now Odom comes over from UNLV to Purdue, and he had to completely revamp the roster. So he brought in 54 transfers and 15 high school recruits. So this team is nearly unrecognizable from what Notre Dame went up against last year, and that's probably a good thing for the Boilermakers considering what we saw from them on the field. Right now, the Purdue Boilermakers are 2-1 to start the year with wins over Ball State and Southern Illinois, but they did lose last week to USC 33-17. That was a weird game, had a 3-hour rain delay at one point. USC had a defensive tackle score, like a 70-yard pick six. Even though they won by 16 points, it was never really in doubt, but still, Purdue put up a valiant effort in that game, going up against a USC team that clearly had way more talent than they did. So right now, Notre Dame is favored by 24.5 on FanDuel, and the over-under is 54.5. The spread has dipped a couple points in recent days, I'm guessing on account of the Irish defense and their performance against Texas A&M, but they're still heavy favorites, and for good reason. If Notre Dame plays up to their full potential, as Marcus Freeman likes to say, they should run Purdue out of the building just like they did a year ago. But that won't happen until this team and everyone involved within the program looks in the mirror and makes a conscious decision that anything less than the standard is unacceptable. Every single player, every single coach, every single member of the support staff had to make that choice on Sunday and then live it out every day this week. And it starts with Marcus Freeman. He has to step in on defense and fix the dysfunction on that side of the ball. Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator, must decide whether he'll preserve the proud culture of Notre Dame defense or let it crumble. He needs to put his ego aside and go back to what works and had worked for years under his predecessor and the guy before that and the guy before that and the guy before that. The assistants can't spend all week pointing fingers either. It's partially on them. They need to own their units and raise the level of play. And the captains, they've got to lead, like really lead this time around. They have not played like captains yet, and that has to change. They need to hold themselves accountable and demand more from every single player in that locker room. John Bryce from Football Scoop reported that Marcus Freeman called out the captains directly on Saturday night after the game, and I believe he has kept that up throughout the week. And there are plenty of reasons that Notre Dame is 0-2, but ultimately it comes down to individuals deciding how they're going to respond. So far, the decisions that they made throughout the season have not been great, but they have a chance to turn it around. Luke and I talked about it yesterday on the show. The vibes around this team and the program are bad right now, and they've been that way really ever since they dropped that game to Miami. It's just felt off, but that's what happens when you lose games. The vibes around last year's team were great at the end of the season when they rattled off 13 straight wins. They were in the college football playoff and everything was going right, but they were not good in September following the loss to NIU. I remember when Notre Dame beat Purdue 66-7, there were a lot of people still unhappy with the performance because Notre Dame did not throw the ball downfield well at all. They won by 59 points and the vibes were still bad because they had just one win coming off that embarrassing loss. But then that team rallied, they started stacking wins and salvaged its season, and they had an unbelievable run to the national championship. This year, it's going to be tougher to stack those wins, especially early on, because they have a more difficult schedule, but their path to redemption started with Purdue last year, and here they are again. This one game is not going to fix everything, but if they do get a decisive win, that could be a massive step in the right direction. On the other hand, if they come out and they play sloppy, even in a win, that's going to raise the tensions even more. Notre Dame has significantly more talent than Purdue. They have a better coaching staff overall. They're at home, and they should be more motivated than ever to kick ass. And if they respond with urgency and some pride, they should blow out Purdue, and they should walk away with some renewed confidence. But if they don't, and they aren't able to fix the issues that have plagued them the first few weeks of the season, then even an overmatched Purdue team can make this game uncomfortable. Saturday is going to tell us exactly what choice this Notre Dame team made. All right, coming up, we're going to dive into my scouting report on Purdue, what they're doing differently under Barry Odom, what matchups Notre Dame can exploit, and the keys to victory. That's next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you could drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Notre Dame, Leonard Moore might have been the only player who delivered for the Irish defense against Texas A&M. Moore finished with an interception, 2 pass breakups, and only allowed one 11-yard reception despite being targeted 5 times in the game. The secondary as a whole might be in disarray, but Moore continues to prove himself as one of the best cornerbacks in college football. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like Leonard Moore delivers for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. All right, let's dive into the scouting report on the Purdue Boilermakers. We're going to start with the matchup between Purdue's offense and the Notre Dame defense because the Notre Dame defense is the story going into this game. And Barry Odom brought in Josh Henson to be Purdue's offensive coordinator. So it's going to be Henson versus Chris Ash. And Henson spent the last 2 seasons with USC as the offensive line coach. And normally, if an offensive line coach becomes the offensive coordinator, they're probably going to want to run the ball a whole lot. And I would say that they probably do want to run the ball, but they haven't really been able to, so they've had to air it out a little bit more with their quarterback, number 15, Ryan Brown. Brown was actually on the team last year. He's one of the few returning players from last year's team, although he did transfer during the offseason. He went to North Carolina in the winter transfer portal window. He spent the spring with Bill Belichick's group, and then he came back to Purdue, and now he is the starting quarterback. Brown played a little bit for the Boilermakers last season. He actually had a really good game against Illinois. And Illinois was a ranked team at the time. They ended up having a good season, and they're having a really good season this year with Brett Bielema as the head coach. In that game against the Illini, Brown completed 69% of his passes for 297 yards and ran for over 100 yards in that game as well. And Purdue lost 50-49 in overtime. It was like the one good game that they played all year last year. But then Brown got completely shut down a week later when they played Oregon. So a little bit different teams there between Oregon and Illinois. This year, he's completing 63% of his passes for 786 pass yards through 3 games. He has 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and 3 of those picks came against USC. The running back, Devin Mockabee, number 45, is their most reliable returning playmaker. I actually had to go and look up the pronunciation of his name because on EA College Football 26, they say Mockabee, and I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right because when Notre Dame played him last year, it was Mockabee. It is, in fact, Mockabee. So Mockabee has had back-to-back seasons as the leading rusher for Purdue, and their offense was supposed to be built around him once again, but it's not really working out. He carried the ball 32 times against Southern Illinois, but he's only averaging 4 yards per carry. He's found the end zone 3 times, and he's fumbled once. They had basically no proven production at wide receiver or tight end going into the year, but some guys have stepped up already. Most notably, Armand Branch, number 6. He leads the way with 167 receiving yards. He also has 2 touchdowns, but they have 4 players with over 100 receiving yards through their first 3 games. Nitro Tuggle, number 0, is a name that Notre Dame fans might be familiar with. Tuggle is from South Bend. He was a 3-star recruit who was actually committed to and played for Georgia for a couple years. And remember, some people were like, why isn't Notre Dame recruiting him? He's from South Bend. Well, Tuggle got kicked off Georgia. You know how hard it is to get kicked off of Georgia's football team? Well, that's what happened with Nitro Tuggle. He's hoping to have a fresh start at Purdue, and so far this season, he has 7 receptions for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, keep an eye out for Michael Jackson III. He leads the team with 14 receptions. They have completely overhauled their offensive line through the transfer portal. They brought in Marquise Easley from Georgia, Brandon Joyner from Auburn, so 2 big-name schools, but so far, they don't have a lot to work with this patchwork unit. Their biggest strengths, I would say, they have been pretty explosive in the pass game. Against USC, 5 different players had receptions of 20 yards or more, but USC was also playing pretty soft coverage because they led throughout the game. But Purdue is ranked 33rd in the country in pass yards per game. It has not been a very balanced offense, though, despite the fact that they are scoring 31.3 points per game. That's very mediocre, tied for 65th in the country because a lot of the big-time schools have been just lighting up bad programs. So even though it seems like a lot, it's really not that much when you consider the competition that they have played. They've been pretty solid on third down so far, converting 20 out of 39 attempts, which puts them at 23rd in the country. But their biggest weakness by far is their offensive line. Despite the fact that Henson is a former offensive line coach, this unit kind of stinks. They have not been able to run the ball effectively. As a team, they're averaging 2.5 yards per attempt, which is 129th in the country. They're 108th in rush yards per game. They've also allowed 19 tackles for loss in 3 games, so their opponents have had no trouble getting in the backfield. That's tied for 118th in the country. And Brown has already been sacked 6 times for negative 46 yards, and they've turned the ball over a lot. They're 122nd in turnover margin. So that leads me to my keys for the Notre Dame defense. The first one is let Freeman cook, because Marcus Freeman made it pretty clear during his press conference on Monday that he's going to be more involved on the defensive side of the ball this week. But in what capacity? That remains to be seen. I don't expect Marcus Freeman to take over defensive play calling. I don't think you want that out of your head coach, although Mike Elko just did it for Texas A&M, although Texas A&M's defense was kind of getting gashed for most of that game. So I don't expect Marcus Freeman to be calling the plays, but he's going to be a lot more involved in the game plan throughout the week. But the main thing that I need to see from this defense, they have to get after Purdue's offensive line. If Notre Dame cannot get in the backfield against this Purdue offensive line, they are in serious trouble. Notre Dame is tied for last nationally in sacks with 1, the Boubacar Traore sack against Miami. They are dead last in tackles for loss with 4. I understand they've only played 2 games. Most schools have played 3. Still, that's inexcusable. Their havoc rate through 2 games is 8.8%, one of the worst in the country. And per PFF, they're 117th in pass rush grade. I understand they played really good offensive lines, or specifically one really good offensive line at Miami and a pretty good one against Texas A&M, and I don't think they're going to see another offensive line as good as either of those two throughout the rest of the season. But still, the fact that Notre Dame has not been able to generate any sort of pressure is inexcusable. They're not getting in the backfield and causing negative run plays either, so that needs to be fixed. And some of that is on the personnel and guys not playing well, but I think it's mostly on the scheme. Chris Ash is not doing enough to confuse offensive lines and the opposing quarterbacks. Like, they'll occasionally run some twists and stunts, but it's just not enough. I understand you want to get pressure with 4, but you can still get creative with which 4 guys you decide to rush and what you show pre-snap and what you ultimately end up doing. But so far, it seems like the offense knows who is coming, which 4 guys are going to be doing it, and it's pretty easy to stop them. Ash has also not utilized the secondary much at all, which was a staple of Al Golden's defenses. According to Jamie Uyeyama from Irish Sports Daily, Notre Dame has not blitzed the nickel 1 time, Leonard Moore has blitzed twice from the boundary, and Adon Schuler has been used once. That's it. So Notre Dame did not have one single dominant pass rusher last year, and yet they were still very good at getting in the backfield by confusing opposing offenses. That led to free rushers, and we're not seeing any free rushers on the Notre Dame defense. So they got to get after the quarterback, and in the back end, they got to simplify the coverages. In fairness to the secondary, it is hard to cover guys when the quarterback has all day to throw, but we have seen way too many instances when the defensive backs are just not in sync. They got to figure out what their guys do best and what they can't do, and then structure the coverages around that, whether that's man or zone, because I know a lot of fans were getting upset with the zone, but they were getting beat in man coverage last week as well. And there have been some rumors that Chris Ash tweaked a lot of their schemes since camp, but they need to go back to what they know, especially considering they're going to be without their captain and starting safety, Adon Schuler, in the first half because he was ejected in the second half of the last game for targeting. And they might be without Leonard Moore and Devontae Smith as well because both of them were listed as questionable in the injury report. In the first half, Notre Dame might trot out Mark Zachary, Christian Gray, Carson Hobbs as the 2 corners and the starting nickel, and then Tay Johnson and either Jalen Stroman or Luke Talich at safety. That's concerning. They need to keep it simple for their sake and the team's. All right, now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. Let's look at Notre Dame's offense going up against Purdue's defense. So Mike Shearer is their defensive coordinator. He followed Odom from UNLV, and the improvements that they made at UNLV with Shearer as the defensive coordinator were pretty significant. So I expect a jump from Purdue this season, but probably not as extreme as what he did at UNLV. They returned 1 single defender from their top 18 players that they had on that side of the ball last year based on snap count, just one. So it's a completely new look on that side of the ball. Right now, Charles Correa, number 5, leads the team in tackles with 20. He also has 1.5 sacks and a pass breakup. Defensive lineman Jamarian Harkless, he is number 7. He is the best PFF grade of anybody in their front 7, but D'Amico Kennedy, number 18, is right behind him. Harkless is better against the run, but Kennedy is better at getting after the quarterback. They also brought in TJ Lindsey from Auburn, who at one time was a big recruit. He's been pretty productive so far this year with 5 tackles, a couple run stops. And in the secondary, Smiley Bradford has been the best player on defense overall. He has 7 tackles, 1 pass breakup, and has been really solid in coverage. There's another name that Notre Dame fans might recognize, former 5-star Tony Grimes. He was with North Carolina a few years ago. He's a recognizable name, but he's already allowed 119 receiving yards and some big chunk plays. Teams have targeted him a lot, as well as Taj Rael and Miles Slusher. And right now, they're 19th in the country in points against, but I think that's a product of a weak schedule. I mean, Ball State is one of the worst teams in the entire country, and USC was able to run for 178 yards against them, and they threw for 282. The one thing that this Purdue defense has been good at is third down, but then they gave up 4 fourth-down conversions to USC. So they stopped them on third, but then they gave it up on fourth. And they've been a little bit better at stopping the run than the pass. They're 62nd in opponent yards per rush. They've been pretty good in the red zone and limited opportunities, and they've been pretty good at getting after the quarterback. But they don't have, like, one signature thing about this defense, or there's not one guy in the defense where, like, that guy's a game wrecker. Funny enough, last year I said Dylan Thieneman was the one player that they needed to stay away from. He ended up having maybe the worst game of his life, although I don't really blame him too much because for whatever reason, Purdue liked to line him 30 yards off the ball, and then he had to make an open field tackle every single play, and that was not working out well going up against Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. But anyway, back to this year's unit. Their biggest weakness is their pass defense. Teams have been airing it out on them. They're 101st in opponent yards per attempt. They just don't have enough talent on that side of the ball. They also have 33 missed tackles through 3 games, which is a lot. Miles Slusher is the biggest culprit with 5. So the keys for the Notre Dame's offense, they're pretty simple. Build on the improvements from last week. The offensive line took a big step forward going from Miami to Texas A&M, but they still got to improve. They had way too many tackles for a loss, and they should dominate Purdue's front and take another big step forward in this game and become the unit that was talked about as one of the best offensive lines in the country going into this year. I'd also like to see C.J. Carr take another step because I thought he took a big step from game 1 to game 2, was airing the ball out downfield. Mike Denbrock let him do it a little bit more. He attempted 10 passes of 20 or more yards. He completed 5 of them, which is a pretty good percentage on deep throws for 149 yards. So I'd like to see around the same number of attempts, especially considering that Purdue can get got in the secondary. And as a whole, I just think that the offense looked much better against Miami. They tweaked some things. They were not running RPO nearly as much. If they wanted to run the ball, they just handed the ball to Jeremiah Love, or he was in the Wildcat. I'm going to be interested to see how much we see the Wildcat in this game. I think we'll see in some short yardage situations, but not nearly as much. And as a whole, they just need to build off of that performance, take another step forward, and then hopefully the defense will follow suit. Otherwise, the offense is going to have to carry that unit for the first few games. And I'd also like to see Notre Dame feed the other guys a little bit more, because Jeremiah Love had a career high in carries against Texas A&M. He's a big factor in the pass game as well. You don't want him taking a beating this early on in the season, especially with Arkansas the following week. So I'd love to see Jadarian Price get more carries. I'd like to see Aeneas Williams back in the mix as well, so long as his elbow is feeling a little bit better. I think Jeremiah Love just needs a break in this game. He can come in the first quarter, maybe break off a few explosive runs like he did last year when he scored the first touchdown of the game in the opening drive. But I've just been loving what I've seen from Jadarian Price. Had 64 yards and 2 touchdowns in the last game. Yes, he did have that fumble against Miami, but I thought he started off that game really well. He was really Notre Dame's only offense at one point. He was the leading rusher in that game despite being benched throughout the second half. And in the past game, it's been pretty much all Malachi Fields and Eli Raridan, and that's great. They've done a really good job so far, but I think this is going to be a big week for Jane Greathouse, who only had 2 catches for 41 yards last week. I think you're going to see him a lot more. I think you're going to see Jordan Faison a lot more, and hopefully the captain, Will Pauling. There might be some more horizontal passing stuff just to see these wide receivers make plays in open space, considering Purdue's secondary is not good at tackling. But overall, I liked what I saw from the offense in Texas A&M. They should be able to build on that against a pretty weak Purdue defense. All right, coming up, we're going to take a look at how special teams could factor into the outcome on Saturday, and then I'll reveal my predictions. That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is just for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. One of my favorite things about Monarch is you can identify all sorts of things you might miss, like maybe you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch also helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All right, let's take a look at the third phase of the game. Ended up being pretty important down the stretch against Texas A&M, to say the least, and it could be important in this one. Purdue is very sound in the kicking game. Their kicker, Spencer Porath, has been perfect on the year so far. 10 of 10 on extra points, 4 of 4 on field goal attempts with a long of 43. But their real secret weapon in special teams is their punter. They lead the country in net punting, which is the most important stat. They have punted 6 times for a net 52.5 yards per attempt, and they have not allowed one positive punt return. On kickoff, 12-15 have been touchbacks, so not a whole lot to report there. The 3 that were returned didn't go very far. They're not particularly dynamic in the return game, which is not too surprising because as a whole, this team doesn't have a bunch of dynamic athletes. They're 60th in kick return yards and have only netted 8 punt return yards. But for Notre Dame, this is going to be an interesting week on special teams because their kicker, Noah Burnett, is listed as questionable with a right hip injury. And we know that he had been dealing with some injuries in the offseason. Marty Biaggi, the special teams coordinator, said that the reason for his injury was that he was kicking too much, which makes you wonder, how did he hurt it again? Has he been kicking too much in practice? He's been solid so far for Notre Dame. I was really concerned about him going in. He was 2 for 2 last weekend against Texas A&M at some big kicks. He's not the kickoff guy, and when Tyler Buchner botched that snap, he looked fine running around. So I don't know where that injury came from, but that is going to be something to monitor. And we'll see who goes out there to kick the extra points and the field goals in this game. But for Notre Dame, the main things that they have to do on special teams, one, get after the punter, because if he gets it off, you're probably not going to be able to do much with it. So if you're trying to make an impact on special teams, we saw them block that punt and return it for a touchdown against Texas A&M. They're going to probably have to get another block punt in this game if they want to make an impact in that regard. Also, just be perfect in the details. Marcus Freeman didn't directly call out Tyler Buchner in the press conference, but he damn near did. He said you can't be 90% in one phase and then have that 10% cost you. Well, Tyler Buchner's botched snap certainly cost him in this game, and I'm wondering if we're going to see Teddy Rizak come out and hold instead of Buchner. I understand that Buchner is an asset if you want to run a fake. It's going to keep opposing teams on their toes when they see him run out there, but if he can't hold this snap, if he can't get it down in the most important game, most important moment of the season, I don't know what he's doing out there. So that'll be interesting to see. Who's going to be holding? Who's going to be kicking? We'll find out on Saturday, which leads me to my predictions. And I'm just going to be honest. I don't feel like I have a great read on this game because I'm not sure what to expect from the Notre Dame sideline. It's probably going to be tense inside Notre Dame to start the game just with kickoff and the fact that we're just 1 week removed from a very heartbreaking loss in what was a great environment at night in prime time, all that stuff. And now it's a Saturday afternoon game. Should be sunny, should be perfect weather, but the crowd is just not going to have the same juice for the Purdue game as they did against Texas A&M. And if the team struggles early, kind of similar to how they did against Miami, Ohio last year when they were making mistakes on special teams and Riley Leonard couldn't throw a 5-yard out, things are not a whole lot of fun in that stadium. And that tension is going to build and build until Notre Dame starts to pull away. I don't think Purdue really has any chance of stopping Notre Dame on offense so long as Notre Dame's offense doesn't shoot themselves in the foot. So I fully expect the Irish are going to put up points in this one, and they should be able to run the ball effectively even without Jeremiah Love getting 20-plus carries. And as long as C.J. Carr has time to throw, I expect he will deliver to his playmakers. But what should we expect from the Notre Dame defense after they just had the worst performance from any Notre Dame defense since 2019? Who knows what to expect? Marcus Freeman is going to be more involved on that side of the ball, like we talked about earlier. But are we really sure that they're going to figure out all those mistakes in 6 days? And as I mentioned, they might be without Leonard Moore, the best player on that defense, and their starting nickel, Devontae Smith, and they're going to be without Adon Schuler, the captain, for the entire first half. So is that secondary with a bunch of backups who just got gashed by Texas A&M with their best two players, are we sure they're just going to be a lot better a week later, even though they're playing a Purdue team that doesn't have nearly the playmakers that Texas A&M has? I don't really know what to expect. I think we're going to find out early in warmups if Leonard Moore is going to be able to go. Obviously, if he's able to play, I'm going to feel a lot better about the secondary because he eliminates one side of the field, but it's still a big concern considering how they looked last week. But Purdue just doesn't have the same talent level as Texas A&M. Obviously, they have some guys who can make plays if they're given the opportunity. But if Notre Dame is going to keep this game close or anything like that, it's going to be because of self-inflicted mistakes. I expect the defense to get better as the game goes on because that's what they did against Texas A&M and that's what they did against Miami. They didn't come through in the very end, but they actually were better in the third quarter in both of those games. And if they're able to just make some of those adjustments early on and keep Purdue in check early on, then Notre Dame could have this game basically handled by halftime. If they come out with this sense of urgency and pride, that's exactly what's going to happen. They should be able to win 45-10 at least because even though Purdue doesn't have much talent, they are a well-coached team. They're going to try. They're not going to give up in the same way that they did last year. But if Notre Dame is still figuring things out and they give up some chunk plays and mistakes start to mount, there is a chance we could be in the third quarter scratching our heads like, how is this even remotely close? I don't think it's going to be a situation where Purdue has a real chance of winning, but I could see a situation where Notre Dame is only up by like 10 in the third, and Notre Dame fans just want a much better performance than that. Ultimately, I have a little bit more confidence in this Notre Dame team that they are going to bounce back. They are going to be hungry. They're not going to fix every mistake on the defensive side of the ball, but I like the Irish to win this game 38-17. As for some other predictions I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be a big part of the game plan on offense. He's going to make some plays after being pretty invisible in terms of like big plays for the first two games. He did have that great 34-yard catch, great play design by Mike Denbrock there, and a great throw by C.J. Carr. So I'd like to see the Jaden Greathouse that we saw at the end of the college football playoff. Same with Jordan Faison, who continues to block. And I'd like to see him just with the ball in his hands because he's so shifty and he's due to break one soon. I honestly thought he was going to break that punt return for a touchdown last week, but it didn't happen. Carr is probably going to have another interception because he's still young, he's still figuring it out, and he's going to continue to be aggressive. But on defense, I think the defensive backs are going to give up a couple chunk plays early that are going to stress fans out. But overall, the defense is going to come through. Tate Johnson is a player I'm really excited to watch. He's going to have a big game. He might not be perfect, but he's going to make a couple big plays of his own. And that's really important because this Notre Dame defense, they've just not come through and made the plays when they are there. Like Carson Hobbs dropped interception in the end zone. Adon Schuler had a chance to. So I think Tate Johnson is going to come in, make his presence felt, just like he did in preseason camp when he was all the rage the first couple of days. And overall, it's going to be a big step in the right direction for this team. We'll be happy with the win. The 3-game losing streak will end. But the real test will come the following week when Notre Dame heads to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas. But for now, this team needs to be focused on the task at hand and making the conscious decision that they're ready to show who they really are. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And please, give this video a like if you're watching along on YouTube, or rate the show 5 stars and leave a review if you're listening to the podcast. I also got a couple fun programming notes on the way out. So tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do an Irish squad show featuring myself, Allison Hayes from ABC 57, and former Notre Dame greats Alan Pinkett and Reggie Brooks. Again, live Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. The podcast will be available shortly thereafter. And also be sure to check out Locked On's College Football Kickoff Show every Thursday, only available on Fire TV. That's all from me. I'll see you tomorrow.